Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and welcome to Mondays with Mr. Happy, aka Mr. Happy Mondays, a weekly Q&A show where you ask me questions and I answer them. So fun little tidbit, my stream actually cut out in the middle of me doing this intro the first time. So I'm doing it a second time right now, and I'm locally recording it, so in case anything goes wrong, I don't get screwed. Just thought you might want to know that. Number 2, I'm going to Japan in 3 weeks. I said that in the first take, so I'm saying it again now, even though I probably don't need to. I put out a video. Any details you need to know are going to be in that one. I don't even remember the other thing I said before the Patreon sponsor list. Oh, it was about the questions for this week. So the Dream Network forums, they went down. I thought they were going to be up for another year after the payment we made last month. Apparently, they were only up for another month. So for next week's Mondays with Mr. Happy, please use the YouTube comment section. I'll be scrolling through that and looking for new questions there as opposed to using the forums like we usually do. Keep in mind that means I probably won't answer every question like I normally do when you go to the forums, but that's the only option I have for now, so it is. This week, we're going to have Twitch chat asking all the questions, so I hope they're good ones. Please. Now I'm going to read the Patreon sponsor list, and if I disconnect again, I'm going to be really upset. So everyone on Twitch, bear with me because you've already heard this before. First, let's thank our patrons of light. We have Khuja Cross on Jenova and Kurenai Oni, both of which who have been massive supporters over the past year. I've said thank you many a times, and the way I'm saying this right now is because I took a lot longer to read this last time. And as such, just because I've already done it once, I'm just going to say to both of you, you get a solid thanks. Now let's read the sponsor list, which I had trouble saying some of these names, so now I have a little more practice trying to say them at the very least. We've got a couple new sponsors, so thank you to those of you who have joined. I haven't even been able to edit the list for March just yet, but I made sure to get a few new names on there. For our standard sponsors, we have Chromegar, I'm never going to say it right. I really wanted to try and get it in one try. Chromegar Holborgson of Gilgamesh. I'm never going to say that. It's going to slow me down every time. Following that, we have Kevin. Two very different names, as you can see. Wabatalia, Alma Elma, Dark Lumina from Jenova, Marianne, Ramil Gaming, Sabo Empire, Mizra, Red Wings of the Baron FC from Zalaris, Cidus, Oreo on Shiva, Syd Hellwind of Gilgamesh, Afro Ninja from Malboro, Cheesecake from Leviathan, That Lame Weeb, Ashen, we have Cerberus, Fafarian, Rendil, Stevie-Rex, and Neon. We have our elite sponsors. We have Guard Drakens from Famfrit, Sigurd Drake from Balmung, Edge Fair on Ultros, Jerica, Emma, Nyark of Clan Vizsla, Krista Uzuki, Crazed the Meter from Midgar, Rajan Ventinus from Cactar, Carol, Ray, Senchi, Shadow Link on Tonberry, Dom, Asukawig from Jenova, Limilla Nelhah of Midgard, Sarma, Saren the Fennel Family, Janhyua Yotsuyu, Kifkin the Great Eagles on Exodus, Kadayoshi from Khuja, Skia Symphonia from Ragnarok, Rylanator Westaus The Purple Warrior, Adjacrit Seal on Exodus, Lexxie Valentine, Mantaru the Rivivus FC from Zodiark, Sour Cream and Tribes from Jenova, Rynoet Chikara, Goisha Falfar of Siren, Phoenix Down FC on Goblin, and Saren from Zodiark. Then we have our elite sponsors. The final bit, easier to say than the rest I find. Vapatiyama of Diablo, Shadow Ari of Brynhildr, Zeravira of Coworld, Alchemy, Shinka, Casual Heroes FC on Midgard, Summer, Tatachi Taka on Hyperion, Kainazuki from Jenova, Yu Starla from Coworld, Sothal, Sarah Frost from Behemoth, Holy Tabasco, Crass 015, Serenity FC on Ultros, Kat Kazuma, Ignis Farragon from Excalibur, Valestra of Fanfrit, Knock Quarters from Excalibur, Krow's Moonsguard, Private Mikey, Nani Kirusami, Rudy Rudiger, Kill Hackman, Raul Jr., and Kiltastic Jones. Thank you. I didn't disconnect. So now, hopefully I don't disconnect again, let's start going to the Twitch chat and seeing what kind of questions they have. Fingers crossed if they're good, but I do expect this to be a shorter weekly Q&A. All right, question number 1, Mr. Happy. Do you think Eureka will be possible when the next expansion launches? Some people like to go back to previous relics for glamour, and there's also the Ozma Mount in Baldessian Arsenal. But once it's no longer relevant with elemental level, it doesn't seem like it'll be possible to truly low-man it. What are your personal thoughts? So first of all, I'd like to say Eureka is more soloable now than a lot of people realize. The entirety of the zone of Eureka scales to the number of people who are inside. When there's only one of you, it's actually pretty close to soloable as we speak right now. Pyros and Hydatos, I can solo NMs with Logos actions, no problem. I have even soloed NMs in Pagos, but some of them are harder to solo than others, and I would only expect a few select classes to be able to do them in Pagos. If they retroactively add the Logos system, soloing NMs in those other zones is actually going to be pretty easy if you're the only one in the zone. That being said, they've made every other relic, which has been primarily done with group gameplay. They've made all of those soloable. You know, you can go back and do those. And yes, unsyncing is a large part of that. I have no doubt, at least for the relics, that Eureka is going to be in its entirety very soloable going into the expansion. That being said, Baldesion Arsenal, I'm not 100% convinced will be. But I've seen the, I guess I've seen the structure for Baldesion Arsenal, and I've seen the way that people create communities around content that may not be as widely appreciated. Stuff like certain PvP maps, or, you know, like Revival Wings is like one that does Rival Wings every Saturday. We've seen Blue Mage related ones popping up. So I really wouldn't be surprised to see that Baldesion Arsenal groups are actually maybe easier to coordinate and do after a little bit of the expansion hype has died down. I wouldn't be surprised to see them throw some nerfs to the Baldesion Arsenal, maybe not solo, but at least doable with a more reasonable number of people considering the age of the content. But I wouldn't be that afraid. Baldesion Arsenal is a maybe to be concerned with not getting it done, but I still think that there's going to be communities around that go back and do it. Hell, there's Diadem community days. Diadem. If those can exist, Baldesion Arsenal can be done as well. Question number 2, Mr. Happy, how do you feel about using ACT triggers? I didn't start until Tsukiyomi helping me with things like what side to go to. Do they make you a worse player? Or do you feel there's nothing wrong with using them? I feel that it depends. So I feel like if you're a perfectly competent player, you don't need them for anything. Every piece of content can be done without them. Now, there's some things that they've designed that are absolutely better with them. I can name 2. The text speech in the Ultimate Coils of Bahamut, and also the jails on Titan in Uwu. Those are ultimate level uses for ACT, and even I didn't need ACT triggers for those 2 things, but I'm, I guess, kind of a less common example. Aloha, I just let you in during this question, and now you're trying to get out, and I don't like it. So I'm going to keep answering the question, Aloha, and you're going to be blamed and shamed in the video. And if I have to get up so you don't scratch the carpet, I'm going to be really upset because you're trying to stick your paw under the door while I'm trying to answer the question, and I don't like it, so I'm actually going to let you out right now. I don't know why you wanted in here in the first place. Go, 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 go. Damn cats. Anyway, to answer that question more directly, I think they're okay if you need an assistance tool and you find that you personally can't overcome this deficiency that you may have with understanding certain things or tunnel vision or any of those things. I'm of the personal opinion you shouldn't need to use them except in extreme cases. There are some people who absolutely rely on them and they never learn how to deal with things properly. They're unable to do mechanics if ACT bugs out and doesn't call it, or ACT is, not updated. And that's embarrassing to some degree because it's like, practice and understanding make for anything. But if you have any sort of medical condition where they may help, maybe your sight isn't as good, or there's something else that you may need them for, or you just have tunnel vision and you're just not at the caliber of player that just instantly understands everything, they can be a good assist tool. I just wouldn't lean on them, and I would try to eventually wean yourself off using them, especially in content that's not at the very top end, because you're not helping yourself get to that tier of content, in my opinion, if you have to rely on ACG triggers for lower tiers of content. Okay, this next question is a really easy one to answer. Mr. Happy, do you think with the next expansion they may increase the max level of Blue Mage? I know and I joke and I hope that they'll make it a full job, but that's not what I'm asking. I'm just asking if they'll increase by the 10 levels the other jobs get. They've already officially commented that, and they said one of the first patches after 5.0 releases, we'll see a level cap to Blue Mage. Now, we're of course not expecting that to be 501 or 502 or 505. We're expecting that to mean 5.1. So I'd expect, here's what my prediction is for the entirety of Shadowbringers. 5.1 Blue Mage goes up to 60. 5.3 Blue Mage goes up to 70. 5.5, if they determine that limited jobs are worth adding to the game again, we see limited job number 2. And my bet is on Beastmaster for a couple of reasons. One being that they named it in order, Beastmaster and Puppet Master, as potential candidates for limited jobs. They didn't say they were guaranteed, but they said potential candidates. Also, the new Mo in particular, while they are known for being magic users in Tactics, they were one of the, I believe, the exclusive user of Beastmaster. I think it was the remakes of Tactics they were. So, yeah. There are other jobs that were kind of like Beastmaster and Tactics, but that one in particular there. So I think they could tie that in a little bit. And then I think that would start at level 60. And then in 6.1, you'd see that gone to 70, and then maybe Blue Mage 8. It's weird to determine after that, but that's my prediction for the 5.x series of limited jobs. Next question, and I read it in advance to know if I wanted to take it, and I almost said no. Mr. Happy, first time askers of a bonus of everyone forgetting about Blitzball. Never mind, I misread it. I only saw the word Blitzball and I saw red. But thank you, because everyone forgetting Blitzball would be a blessing. It'd be a blitzing. Anyway, for my question, I want to try maining Gunbreaker and Shadowbringers, but I'm not that good of a tank. What could you suggest to help me get accustomed? I'm not going to lie. Practice. Try. I mean, it sounds like you've already defeated yourself by saying, I'm not very good. Who cares? Go play the tanks now, and then you'll play the tanks again later, and maybe you'll be more conducive to tanking on a job you're more interested in. But all those kind of questions are always just try, practice. Same way you would get good at anything else in life. You got to do it in order to do it. That's not a real phrase. I'm going to leave it in. Next question. Hey, Mr. Happy. Congrats on the move. Thank you. And the Japan trip. Honestly, that made the move so much easier to tolerate when I found out. That was like, after the move, you got to go to Japan. I can't wait to announce it. With your upcoming interview to Yoshida, where will you pull questions from yourself, patrons, other streamers, general questions from the community? I usually have a pretty set list. So the biggest concern I have with this is you can only ask certain questions, really, with Yoshida. At least in my experience from interviews I've done with him before, they need to be answerable questions. I find that most often people just ask kind of the most binary questions. What's the next job? Where are we getting the next healer? Or, then you got the Peaches questions where it's like, how come I can't use this specific type of fish as a lure? It's ruining my immersion. And then you have the same questions as before, like, I've asked this a million times. Where's Eggy Glamour? It's very tough to find questions that are, I guess, usable. So what I normally do is I ask some of my co-hosts through State of the Realm. They usually give me a few questions that they want me to at least try to squeeze in. And then I have to base it off of the announcements that we get at JP FanFest. What if after the announcements at JP FanFest, I've got a million other questions that I didn't even think of because we didn't know those things in advance. And then I kind of want to ask him some stuff about the future of exploration content, but that would be more of a discussion. It's tricky because I don't know how much time I have. I don't know what the contents of the JP FanFest are yet, but I generally just pull from, I guess, a list of my own premeditated questions, and then I adjust it based on the announcements, and then I also take into account the things that my co-hosts that I offer on State of the Realm, any questions they might have. It really depends on how much time I have. I don't know how much time I have, so I guess I don't know exactly how I'm going to do these questions, but it's generally how I've done them in the past. All right, next question. Haps, do you think that job complexity will increase with the expansion or stay pretty much the same? In parentheses, want to buy change. Haven't been paying much attention to the news lately. So, I don't think that there's a set less or more. I think it's a lot based on just individual changes to the job. When I think of Monk is way busier this expansion ever since the emergence of the Tornado Kick. But if you look at the amount of complexity it looks like they intended to add, it wasn't very high. Dragoon, yes, you could say they added more buttons and they've added a deeper set into the rotations with Life of the Dragon. But has it really gotten more complicated? I don't know. It seems to still flow very much the same, but it's very rigid. It's even more rigid now. So a mistake or a death is way more punishing than it was, but I wouldn't say that if you're going through that it's necessarily gotten that much more complex. They've added another element to it. Summoner, I don't even know what to say. Summoner, once you've gotten past the first 2 minutes, is pretty static. But again, if you die and you have to start over, it goes to shit. White Mage, I don't think has ever gotten more complex for me. Astro, I'd say their complexity, pretty much they just added star and took away some of your dots and they made some changes. That's the thing. I don't think complexity has ever necessarily gotten worse other than Heavensward. I think Heavensward had a lot of unnecessary, changes to certain jobs, and they also added some that were, machinist with its very particular flow. And it's hard to determine if it's complexity or if it's different, or if it's just different. Because sometimes just doing something different after doing it the same way for nearly 2 years, sometimes that seems complex, but it's really not. And then you have Paladin, who's just subsequently gotten more and more tools to deal with everything. I'd say they've gotten more interesting, and definitely more complex, actually. I'd say Paladin might be one case where it actually got more complex. Melee phase, magic phase, more situational options. They got a lot of everything. And then Warrior, I'd argue, is so not complex right now. You know, you don't have to worry about fracture timings. You have a 10-second window where you're a god, and then you just have to know how to not fuck up for the other 80 seconds. So, and then Dark Knight, just press Dark Arts a shit ton, you know. But then you've got the little things like, do I Dark Arts here? Do I Dark Arts there? Should I only Dark Arts before this? What about when this skill's coming up? And I don't know. All I know is I think it'll stay about the same, but things will just change. I'm sure one or two jobs, and potentially maybe the new ones, might have something that seems a little more complex, but I don't ever feel that when you have that anything in 14 is complex beyond understanding. If you're good at understanding the way a job plays, you've generally conquered 80% of the problem. And even if you have a mess up here or a mispositional there, as long as you're flowing through that same little dance and not missing anything too major, you're good. You've memorized it. You just have to make sure you don't fuck up, and then you're good to go. All right, next one. I don't even know how many I have. I'm just kind of going until I think I have enough. Hey, Haps, with DMC 5 coming out soon and with the hype on your stream, what other games other than 14 do you normally enjoy? I actually used to enjoy a vast, like, just a huge array of different games. You know, I look back to my childhood and I think of playing random-ass games like Hexen, and then some of the cult classics like Rayman, and then, of course, everyone had GoldenEye, and it's like, I had first-person shooters. I had Jet Force Gemini as a third-person shooter. You know, I had puzzle games. I had RPGs. I had everything in my arsenal. The only reason it's a lot more focused nowadays is because, I'll be honest, what I do for a living now is exactly that, what I do for a living. So I can't just do whatever I want. I kind of have to be a little bit more tactical and a little smarter about it. I'm always willing to make sacrifices along the way. Sometimes I play a title that's not necessarily great for my stream, but I enjoy it. You know, maybe it's a little therapeutic, or just to break it up for myself a little bit. Maybe just see how it does. You know, I played the Grand Tour game, you know, the show on Amazon with, you know, after Top Gear fell apart with, you know, Clarkson May and I can't speak this fast, Clarkson May and Hammond. They made a game where you play through the episodes. I did a sponsored stream for that. I've never played a racing game ever on stream before, but I did that and it was a lot of fun. You know, is it something I'll do frequently? No, but I enjoy tons of different games. It's just a matter of I can't just stream anything because I need to be smart about where my audience is. That's why RPGs, whether they be action RPGs or turn-based RPGs, have generally been what I've leaned towards. And of course, Final Fantasy XIV and trying out other MMOs like Blade and Soul, Twin Saga, ESO. You know, I've gone through the motions with a bunch of those. But as you can see, you know, I started playing Destiny way back when, and then I gave that up because I really didn't like it. Destiny 2 I didn't even bother with. Anthem I haven't bothered with. Yet Division 2 is something that's on my radar. You know, there's all these games that I really do want to play, but A, I either don't have the time, or B, I have to be smart about my time. You know, I can't spend it on something that I guess isn't good for my time. And I don't really know how else to describe it other than that. So everything. This month in particular, Sekiro, Left Alive's kind of on the radar, not super crazy much. Chocobo Dungeon, Devil May Cry 5. We have patch 4.5 part 2. Of course, I have FanFest. Like, those are just the bare minimum of interests that I have this month, and I'm sure if I stopped and thought about it, I could come up with more. So, I'm going to be busy. I'm going to be real busy. All right, the next question. Mr. Happy, what would be your ideal scenario for our Relic in 5.0? More Eureka-like content that's separate from everything else, or Relic steps that are built into the game like it was in the previous expansions? I actually want a mix of... Here's the thing. I ultimately want it to be where it's built into old content. I feel like that was the healthiest state the game has been in for getting people to do older content. Now, there are some extremes. I didn't like the Animus books. I didn't like the initial 3.15 step of the Anima weapon, where we did 600 Alexanders on normal mode. Those aren't what I feel are the healthy choices. The healthier choices are the ones where I can log in. I'm encouraged to maybe do a little bit of all the roulettes, maybe go visit some other type of content that maybe I can spam, or it's just an option I can do once a day, or anything like that. I feel like that's when the game's at its healthiest. Now, they've already expressed an interest in doing more exploration content, but there hasn't been any comment on if the Relic weapon has anything to do with that. I think exploration content with the gear types of gear that they've shown in Hydatos with the public dungeons, as much as they need to change the entry for it. I think exploration content with the right gear and the right mindset can actually be its own thing that doesn't need to give you your relic weapon. They can make it so there are item level relevant rewards that come from it, but it doesn't need to be the exclusive source of the relic weapon. I'd be okay with the relic weapon having exploration content as maybe one of the steps, or maybe an option for you to do for any steps. Maybe what if you went in there and like maybe you could get the key items from bun chests, you know? You could get the items for the relic quest from the bun chest, or maybe you could just go gather tomestones like you're used to doing, and you go and do all your roulettes. Suddenly you have a variety of options that are involved in multiple pieces of content and not all stuck in one. I just really don't want it to all be stuck in exploration content. Even when I enjoy exploration content, I don't enjoy that type of relic weapon. But I'm concerned about them incentivizing exploration content properly without one. So ideal is a mix of the two, but mostly just allowing or incentivizing old content like it did in the past. All right, the next question is going to be a fun one. Mr. Happy, my friend quit Final Fantasy XIV. He felt that anything he got was pointless because of ketchup patches. Everyone will eventually be as strong as you, unlike in 11. Thoughts? So I'm gonna give you the honest truth here. You're playing a video game. Everything you're doing is pointless. I'll be honest about it. Everything you're doing is pointless. So if that has that much value to you, then you do need to play a game that more suits your values. I mean, that's the truth. You do need to play something that more closely suits your values, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I'm always of the opinion the content and the encounters and the options, they need to be fun. So Final Fantasy XI is a game I still to this day play. I have seen the new content in 11, and I have played it while simultaneously playing Final Fantasy XIV. I'm of the opinion that 11 nowadays is actually a more approachable game in a very positive way, with a lot of the same strengths that it had way back when. I think it's better now than it was back then. It's more accessible, but at the same time, anything you want that is crazy strong, you're putting a fuck ton of effort in to actually get it. And the difference is you can do it without needing 17 other people to work on some of those things. And then you still need 17 other people for all the difficult content because you can't solo all that shit. So it still works out pretty well. And that being said, its horizontal progression, I think, is better now than it ever was in the past. The items have way more impact on your overall outputs, and you're going to have a lot more to collect now than you ever did way back when. With Final Fantasy XIV, though, I enjoy the content more, because 11 content, snoozeville to me. It's either just enemies that just do something super overpowered that you need to stun, or you just roll over everything anyway. I mean, you got to remember, I was a hardcore endgamer in 11. We rolled over everything. It wasn't even fun. It was a social room where I got loot, pretty much. Whereas in Final Fantasy XIV, even though it's more jump ropey and it's the same every time, at least for the most part, it's more interactive, it's more fun. Just because it's more predictable doesn't make it less fun to me. Because Final Fantasy XI, less predictability, it's not fun. It just wasn't fun for me. And it still isn't. I still think the content in 11, while it's better now and it's got more interesting stuff, it's also got twice as much dumb bullshit, never let this enemy cast an ability or you're dead kind of content. It also has Summoner, which is really strong if you have the right stuff. So I'm of the opinion, if your friend needs that kind of gameplay, he should just play 11. It's live. There's no reason not to. But I personally have no agreement with him on caring about catch-up patches, because I did it when it was relevant, and the experience of beating something the first week when nobody has any gear and nobody knows the fights, or overcoming something like Ultimate for the first time, and the time that I spend with the people that I do when I do that, is valuable to me. More so than the gear, because the gear doesn't matter. If a game shuts down tomorrow, that gear's worthless. It's got no value. It's wasted. It's gone. It doesn't hold value to me. All right, this next one I've had a bit of a discussion with, especially in light of the Baldesion Arsenal. So, Haps, what do you think about raises in the game maybe being a bit too powerful and accessible? With Baldesion Arsenal shaking things up, do you think they should change how raises work? I think they need more content where raises doesn't work, but I don't think you need to necessarily restrict them in Savage and Ultimate level content. I think the idea of instead making deaths a much more punishing thing, I think of things like how Golden Bahamut phase works, where if you die in that phase, you've lost a major part of actually clearing that fight. If you die in the Ultima Weapon final phase, then you're speeding up his enrage. I think adding more things like that where dying is so much more, well, it lets you recover and keep seeing the fight. It also starts to make the fight closer to unclearable if you're not actually performing at an acceptable level. I'd rather see more of that than, well, we wasted our 1 res for the fight. I don't know. To me, that's just not as interesting. I see World of Warcraft bosses, and they are interesting when those deaths go out, and they're like, well, we don't have that option anymore. But I don't know. I don't think it's that interesting in terms of Savage and Ultimate level rating. But I think we could do with more content that has those types of punishments. Maybe, you know how we have like minimum item level and, you know, unsynced as options? What if there was, you know, a resurrections disabled option, and then there's achievements for completing content with resurrections disabled? Now, to be honest, if you're good at content, you don't die, whatever, it doesn't matter. You know, like if you've been doing it week after week after week, that actually doesn't mean anything anyway, because you're not gonna die on that content regardless. It's pretty much only interesting to me for like first clears. After that, the whole res restriction thing just, it's kind of eh. But I think there's room for it. I just don't think it needs to be in all the other content, as opposed to the way that we have it now. All right, everyone, I think I got all the questions. We had a few other discussions that aren't in the YouTube video. So if you want to ask your questions for next week, ask them in the YouTube comment section. Can't guarantee that I'll answer them. But also, if you want to ask your questions live, don't forget we do live stream our weekly Q&As every Sunday between like 1 and 2 p.m. Pacific. We went a little overtime today because Devil May Cry had to do it. We also ran into the technical issues, of course. But all the same, it's there. We're here. It's done. You guys get your questions. You guys get your answers. And we're all good to go. So on the YouTube side of things, I'm going to sign off. Thank you again to our Patreon sponsors, of course, as we stated at the top of the video. And those of you watching on Twitch, thank you for providing the questions this week in their entirety. We had plenty of good ones, so I appreciate that a lot. I don't know if you guys can hear that banging sound, but I'm going to end the video before we hear too much more of that. Anyway, I'm going to hang out with the Twitch chat for a few more minutes. But on the YouTube side of things, thank you for watching, and I will see you next week. Until then, take care.